3. It was a very hot summer. I remember helping my mother suffer through a pregnancy that culminated in the birth of Margie at Fort Jackson Station Hospital. We joked that she wasn't born, she was issued, government issued. And then we grew up. We were 3 little maids. Josie went first about 3 years ago. Margie went this time. She wasn't supposed to go first. And as Roosevelt says, thou art the only one that's left. I remember many things about Margie. Naturally, we followed the same course in the Gilbert Sullivan Company. We played many of the same roles, and a favorite of each of us was Phoebe in The Yeoman of the Guard. And when she played that role, some years after I did it, I was amazed to see the inflections in her reading were practically mine. It was very flattering to think how she copied me. And it's obviously she didn't proofread this program, or she would have said that it's not Barbara, but as many of you know, it's Barbara. She was a very good secretary. I subbed for her in this parish one summer, and it was a pleasure to get to know all of you. And now, as Rosemary once says, thou art the only one that's left. God will remember her with great love.
Good morning. Margie and I both became widowers in 1986. We met 8 years later for the first time. Terry Lewis was getting married. She invited me to be in her wedding party. So I drove up from Piscataway to Happydale, the Edson family home here in Ridgewood, for a pre-wedding luncheon so we'd all meet each other. I parked out on the street, walked up the driveway, and saw this very attractive woman talking to other people, and I saw her smile. Arthur. She radiated. And I said, that is someone I would like to get to know. 2 years later, on a perfect day in May, we were married. Margie and I were alike in many ways, but we were also very different. She was a lady of the theater and musical comedy, and I came from radio and television and movies. She loved classical music and the opera, and I liked the jazz and blues and rock and roll. She summered on Fire Island, and I wintered in the Caribbean. She loved gardening, and I loved motorcycles. She went to Shea Stadium and rooted for the Mets. I went to Monmouth Park and bet on the ponies. And out of all that and a lot more, we built and created our we. Our love, our marriage, our friendship, 22 years of growth, change, and adventure. We both love nature and animals, and we discovered adventure touring and eco-expeditions. We traveled the world. When I decided in my late 60s to return to college, Margie did too. She earned a master's in liberal studies. Her thesis was slavery in New Jersey, not in my backyard. She chose it because she discovered that slavery was not a topic taught in the history books in the state of New Jersey. We challenged each other, we inspired each other, and we made each other better. We're so much more than the sum of our parts. There's a law in physics that states energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only be changed in its form or matter. Anyone who knew Margie knew about her energy. Out in California, she's known as the Energizer Bunny of the desert. And if you're anywhere near Margie, you shared in that energy. It's still within you today as we celebrate her remarkable life. It's in our memories, our shared experiences, and in our hearts. The energy that is Margie is not gone. It's just transformed. I don't know where, and I don't care. But it's still within me and all of you. When we first moved to the desert, we would sit on our patio at night, we would look up at the mountains and the stars. And one light shone more brightly than all the rest. Margie said, I wonder what that light is. And I, being a hopeless romantic, said, that's Margie's star. Well, we came to learn that it was actually the light on top of the aerial tramway. It goes from the desert floor to a great meadow 8,600 feet above the desert floor on Mount San Jacinto. It's a whole different world up there. It's 40 degrees cooler. They have snow and we sizzle. They have pine trees, we have palm trees. All the animals and the plants and the trees are different up there than all the animals and plants and trees down in the valley. And Margie's star moves between them, sometimes distant, sometimes close, but always here. Margie's star is my metaphor for this amazing woman who gave me so much. I love her, I miss her. But I only have to step out on the patio to be with her again. And in closing, yes, I talked to Margie Starr. You can too if you like. I'm sure she'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, the two of you, and Barbara, my bad. On the bulletin spelling, you may slap me on the wrist later. Margie was church secretary, and I use that term loosely because she redefined the term to 3 pastors here at Emmanuel Baptist Church. The first person she served with was the Reverend Dr. James Breaker. He now lives in retirement in Rochester, New York with his wife, Flo, and they were not able to come today. So I have some remarks from him to share with all of you. And I'll begin with my own imitation. Good morning, Emmanuel Baptist Church. To hear Margie's voice on the phone was to be treated to a warm, welcoming exchange. She communicated caring and well represented her church. That same beautiful voice, with lilt and sparkle, revealed her love for and excellence in music and theater. Margie excelled at connecting with others. She certainly challenged any stereotype of church secretary. I imagine others remember the photo she had in the office of herself in a bathing suit, about to water ski into the ocean off Fire Island. And as part of the Gilbert and Sullivan family, she invited our youngest daughter to join in the fun. That is just one example of her contagious enthusiasm. After I concluded my time in Ridgewood, Flo and I went to serve for 3 years at the English-speaking church in Turin, Italy. How delighted we were when the Lewises visited us there. We deeply regretted that when Margie's illness prevented a much-anticipated visit from them last May, as they were heading east, hopefully to visit many of you here. And then when we learned of her passing, we drew comfort from the rich storehouse of happy memories of this vibrant and vivacious colleague and friend. We imagine each of you doing the same. The next pastor with whom Margie served is the Reverend Dr. Lloyd Kenyon, who just shared with me that he's celebrating 65 years of ordained Christian ministry. Lloyd, we're so happy you could be here.
What a wonderful month for memorials. Aretha Franklin, John McCain, and Margie Lewis. And she's just as important to us as anyone else, or either of those two. A very special person. Someone has said that there are four kinds of people in the world. Those who make things happen, those who watch things that are happening, those who don't care what happens, and those who have no idea what's happening. Margie, of course, was one that made things happen. She was not only a spark of light and joy and compassion and friendliness and outreach, but she also fulfilled the position of receptionist. I often thought how fortunate this church was to have her as the first person anyone saw when they came off the streets into the church during the week. People would come through the door with great needs, and the church had a closet full of diapers and baby food and clothes and vouchers at the grocery store, and Margie could discern who needed what and when and where, and make people happy and content as they left. Not only did they come to the door, but we had a school of 20 or 30, 40 children above us called the Homestead School every day of the week, and not a week went by, but there was some kind of crisis and emergency. Where did they go? To the office to talk with Margie, who would solve the problem. And then on Sunday afternoons, after our church services were over and we had gone home, there was a Korean church that came in week after week, and they occupied the kitchen and had huge vats of rice and wonderful smelling oriental food, and people sitting around the tables enjoying it. Unfortunately, they left a lot of it there. And when Margie came in Monday morning, she would sometimes find a couple of people sleeping in the pews. Margie took care of it. And then we had other things happening also that were just as important. We had a shelter program. 2 or 3 weeks of the year, people from Patterson and other communities without a home for a brief period of time could come to one of the churches of Ridgewood that were cooperating, and they would have an evening meal, they would have a place to rest, they would get up in the morning and have breakfast and have a lunch as they went to work that day, and the people of our church provided those things. And Margie supervised it and filled in again and again. Many times when I would come in the morning, she had filled in for someone who didn't show up and had to be in the facility each and every evening. All of these things she did because she was committed to the church, and she was committed to making the lives of all people as healthy and as comfortable and as worthwhile as possible. Jason tells me she did the same thing in California for years. She has literally given 2 days of every week at a food kitchen, serving people lunch as they came in every day. And she was a part of their promotional program, going out and raising funds for them. In addition to this multi-talented woman whom we know sang so much and did all of these other things, did you know that before we at a restoration of our church facilities, we had a furnace that broke down about every 2 or 3 weeks, at least once a month. Professionals came in from the outside and never could solve the problem. And so we would have to ask Margie to go down, and no one knew her secret. No one knew her secret, but when she came up, the heat was flowing into the church. You talk about a multi-talented woman. It was certainly her, and I always can remember on my last day here, I came as an interim. Interims are supposed to serve for several months. They couldn't get rid of me. I lasted for 3 years. And I lasted because every Monday morning, or most Monday mornings, Margie would come in for our 15 minutes or 30 minutes together, and she would tell me what needed to be done. And sometimes she told me how to do it. And she would tell me what didn't need to be done, and things I should not be doing. So she was extremely helpful and helped me to stay on for those 2 extra years. And I shall always remember with great joy the reception that this church gave me. And Ed, who is here, thank heavens, that Margie composed a brilliant piece of music which they in the choir sang. It was entitled, for me, "He Loves to Preach." And they went on and on and on. And it's something I still remember with great joy and with great affection, not just because of the words, but because of the 2 people who did it. Margie, we love you, we appreciate you, we think of you with a great deal of pleasure. Thank you for who you were and for your contributions to our life.
Margie was our singing secretary. How wonderful it would be to leave my office door open, and no matter where she went, doing whatever she was doing, she was always singing. Snatches of a hymn, part of a Gilbert and Sullivan score, whatever she was working on at the time. It was wonderful that her voice filled these corridors. She also helped me in another way with her music. True confessions, I don't read music. I wing it. And I would look at a hymn for the next Sunday and theologically like the words, and walk down to her and with my open hymnal and said, "Does the congregation know this? What do you think about this?" And she'd hum a few bars and go, "Not that one." So she spared many of you some of my ill-gotten choices. Some people see the world as half empty. Some see it as half full. Margie saw it as overflowing. Her cup overflowed with joy that touched each of us in a special way. How wonderful we were able to be part of that joyous flood. Also, Margie to me was an example of grace under pressure. Who else can you think of who makes up a song about being a glowworm to sing to herself while she's getting chemotherapy? And to rejoice in the fact that her straight hair came in curly later. And to be able to always see what was possible and what could be done, not what couldn't be done. It was a wonderful example to me of someone who could take the very principles of loving one's neighbor as oneself and put them into action in any situation, as Lloyd so wonderfully described. She never met a stranger, and she never, ever looked down or demeaned anyone. She saw everyone as a person of worth. Would you give tribute in your life to Margie, Edson, Perrine, Lewis? Do the same. I'd now like to invite Margie's dear friend Dawn to lead us in the Serenity Prayer.
Good morning. Before we recite the Serenity Prayer, to know Margie was to love Margie. When you met Margie, the first thing you saw was her beautiful smile. And then you realized her sweet demeanor. And then you came to know that this was a person who really had a tremendous amount of the energy that Jason just talked about before. But everybody here knows Margie from a different perspective. And it might be church secretary, it might be from Gilbert and Sullivan, it might be from family, it might be from knowing her as a boiler repair woman, it might be knowing her from AA. And I knew Margie from here in the church as a secretary, and I knew her from AA. And in AA, we have found healing, we've found growth. And within AA, this little prayer, this Serenity Prayer, has so much packed into it. It's a prayer that came about by a man by the name of Reinhold Niebuhr. And he was a pastor, he was a theologian, he was an ethicist, and he was a professor at Union Theological Seminary. There's a longer prayer, but the first 4 lines of it are what you see in your program here on the bottom. And it talks about being able to accept things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and wisdom to know the difference. I would suggest to you that the wisdom that's being spoken of here is the wisdom of God, and that's the wisdom that for us really shows us what life is about, because it's not the wisdom of man. And for me, I've found great solace in staying in the center of what this prayer says. So if you would join me, on the bottom of your program you'll find this, and it says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can,